Patent and trademark law is borderless, at least within the United States.
By tracking things, you're able to actually make optimizations based off of what's happening.
You can't train somebody to be a good fit.
I loved your response there, especially when you're saying try and spend half the time in the business, half the time on the business.
If you disclose an idea publicly, at some point, it's going to be no longer patentable because it's now out in public.
The things that people tell us to be doing actually works, right?
At some point, you have to trust people and hope that you've set like a good example.
Welcome to the podcast from Cold to Close. My name is Saeed and I'm the founder here at SRC Growth Partner, a growth company that works with professional services firms from around the world to help them increase their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. My guest today is David Boag, Managing Partner of Boag Law, a patent and trademark law practice that's redefining what modern law firms look like. After spending 10 years at a large patent firm in New York, David made the bold decision to leave the security of big law behind and build something entirely different, what he calls a law firm 2.0. David's firm is a fully remote practice that serves clients globally and specializes in federal patent and trademark law, which means they're not bound by any state boundaries and can serve clients just about anywhere. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No, I'm really looking forward to it. And I think just from our conversations and understanding the way your journey to starting your own law firm and also your model, I'm really looking forward to being able to dig deeper into that and having a really interesting conversation in terms of the business model and professional services as a whole. But for those viewers and listeners out there who may not know who David Boag is and don't necessarily know what a law firm 2.0 model is, could you maybe give them a brief origin story of yourself and also where you are today and what you're doing at Boag Law?
Well, the origin story, we could go back a little farther, but let's start with what led me to start the business, which was something fairly mundane. This was 2013-ish, and a very, very good friend of mine had launched his own startup. Another attorney who I knew from my old firm, he was running basically a domain verification startup. And I went to visit him at a WeWork, and this is when WeWorks were cresting, and I saw other professional services firms there. I saw these other businesses there. And in my head, the idea of there were two poles in law. It was the kind of dreary, beige, as I call it, solo practice or big firms. And this opened up an idea to me, just exposed me to this idea that maybe that there was something else, that you could do things that were a little more techy, a little more modern. It wasn't that running a smaller firm was something less than. It could actually be interesting and nimble and serve clients in a different way. And 6 months later, I started my own practice. Things had been running to ground at the old firm, and I was like, I need something new, and launched it without a single client from the old firm and just kind of organically built it up. And I spent the first 6 years until the pandemic in the same WeWork space and met a lot of contacts, clients, got a lot more involved in the startup industry, and that kind of launched it. So when I say we are the law firm 2.0, I didn't by any means invent the concept. But what I did do was go out and I met a lot of other attorneys that had adopted business practices from these universal modern business practices, like the idea of systemization. It seems like it's a very logical, obvious thing to do, but a lot of firms don't deliver legal services that way. And that's by no means is it one size fits all at all. That's not how this works. What is we can do things in a way that is repeatable and efficient, where it's repeatable and efficient, where we have to branch out into things which much more customized we can. But by having that core efficient delivery model, it helps us keep costs down, it helps us deliver better services, it helps us deliver faster services. So that's one of the things that we've been doing, just as simple as that. Build on now as time has gone on, a lot more technology. AI is everywhere. We've been using it for a while for drafting, for searches, for lots of different tools. We're actively exploring where is this going to go. A lot of people are freaked out by the concept of, is there going to be anything left for humans? And we see it as an opportunity. There's a way we can continue that delivery model and do things faster, better, less expensive, and still get really high quality results. So all of this is to say that we thought we could do something a little bit different. It has not been perfectly linear. You make mistakes along the way, you figure things out. But we like to think that, we can be at our size, we can be nimble and use technology effectively and use some really solid practices, deliver a solid, consistent product.
I think a lot of what you said was very interesting, but one of the key things that really struck out to me was used the words efficient, faster, and things like less expensive, cost efficient, things like that, right? And that isn't synonymous with the typical big law model, right? Where you've got billable hours that you charge by. You want to be spending more time to be able to bill as much as you can. So it's a really interesting way to approach it. But your journey itself, it strikes me back to when I first started my career. I started in an accounting firm, right? And it's not too dissimilar in that sense. A larger accounting firm is full of ancient or traditional expectations, right? And then when you move away from that and go, no, wait a second, we're at a time now where we have technology that can make our lives easier. We can make things better and more efficient. And so it's really interesting to hear that you've gone down that direction. But it must have been a challenging road leaving the organization and then obviously growing it throughout the COVID period as well. What were the challenges that you faced when starting in that direction?
Just to go touch on something you said before about the accounting firm, it was very similar at my old firm. I learned as a first year associate, I was working with one of the founding partners who had founded the firm in 1953, which is the year that my mother was born. But I learned a ton from him. There's something to be said for those old ways of doing things. But when you don't adapt and you're still sending faxes and things like that, email, I remember being somewhat controversial internally. You have to, adapt along the way so you can combine the two. So I learned so much from that firm about the way of doing things with diligence and being careful. I got yelled at a couple times, but there's a lot to be learned from that older model. In terms of the challenges, I mean, to be perfectly honest, the practical challenges, like I was going through some life changes at the time. I had gotten divorced like the year before. I'm happily remarried, fast forward. But back then, there were some life changes going on. So it was kind of like anything for grabs all of a sudden. And I was able to do this because I had health insurance from the old firm for a little bit. That's a big deal. I mean, in America, if you don't have private health insurance and have, an employer contributing for it, it's very, very difficult to do that. So that was big. The financial challenges, honestly, it was tough. Explaining it to my father was an immigrant from Scotland. We always joke about his immigrant experience to the United States. I guess he would sometimes compare that to other people who have made the journey here. And I point out to him that, his journey was difficult and it was massively a huge risk for him. He spoke English, he had a college degree, he had family here. It was like a softer land. But he was, by his nature, except for that one massive risk that he took, he was very risk averse and kind of went along happy with the job that he had. He was a research chemist at an adhesives company. And it was hard for him to fathom taking a chance like that and not going for like the consistency and the comfort of something else. And I still think about that sometimes. It's like, weigh the pros and cons, but like the upside here still is, the idea of being your own boss and like having it be, there's two sides, but having it be your own enterprise works both ways, right? You were just out there. Like it's been like a massive growth experience. So you learned a tremendous amount about yourself, your own anxieties, your own weaknesses, your own strengths. But those were all challenges, definitely, along the way. It's like, is this the right thing to do? Am I crazy for giving up years of like, and then you finally like things normalize and like, okay, this is where I want to be. This is actually really great. I can't imagine like doing anything different at this point. Then COVID wasn't horrible from a business perspective. COVID was horrible from a New York City perspective, a personal, everything else. We were lucky we got out of the city for a little bit and had space. So we weren't super confined. And, that was when remote work broke into the mainstream. That was another horrible, horrible thing to happen to human civilization. But it shepherded along this new era of like, oh, we can do a lot of this stuff by Zoom. And I don't meet clients in person very much anymore. So what was a challenge kind of became a little bit of an advantage. But that's, those are the big ones along the way. Money, health insurance, that inner voice, like, why are you giving up something predictable and normal and doing this? Definitely.
It's really interesting, and especially the transition that you had pre-COVID and obviously when COVID came, and it's well known as almost the great reset when it comes to business, right? And primarily because people started working from home more often, and clients were more comfortable in taking Zoom calls and things like that. And so it's really interesting to hear that you had that advantage already by being so close, starting your business and being so close to that period in that sense. In terms of law firms as a whole were quite, from my understanding, hesitant about remote work. There's a lot of things that there's a natural pushback towards it, as with most industries, and some are asking for employees to come back. Talk to me about your firm and remote work and how you've implemented specific systems, technologies to make yourself as robust as possible as a law firm that is remote first in its
Yeah,
approach.
I mean, it's technology is a part of it, but it's really like culture, expectations, boundaries. You can't just have everybody go remote and then just kind of hope for the best. There's a clear window of like, when we're working, we're kind of all on, there's an expectation, especially with the more of like the support staff role of like, if I reach out, I get in touch with you, there's an expectation to get back to me in a very reasonable amount of time, especially depending on what the job is, because some things are more time sensitive. But for the other things, like a lot of people, like I think there's especially generational that there's an expectation. Like you can trust me to get this done and I'll get this done. And even though I'm working at home, like even though it doesn't make sense for me, like I hate working from home. Personally, it doesn't work for me. That's my home. That's like leisure and maybe a little clutter and a little mess. It's not conducive to me getting a solid workday on. Like I'm at Soho House has a workspace in Dumbo, right near the bridge in New York City. I've been here for about the past year and a half. I love it. I love coming in. I like my space that's separate from home. But people want that. You have to figure out a way to adapt to that. We're not Amazon where we can just be like everyone comes in 5 days a week. It doesn't work for a lot of people. It's a lot of waste too for a lot of people. Wasted productivity. Commuting. I'm sure you know where where you are. There's a real cost to moving from place to place in a big city. So we try to be, like I said, there's an expectation. We're here to get things done. But the reality is it's fine if we don't see each other in the office that much or at all, to be perfectly honest. And the same thing goes with clients. Like it trickles down to that because I would say, like since COVID, I can't think of the last client that we met in person because we work with people all over the country. Patent and trademark law is borderless, at least within the United States. And as long as you don't get into like the ancillary issues, contracts, it works fine. We have clients all over the world. It hasn't harmed, at least in my view, it hasn't harmed the ability to interact with those clients, to develop relationships, to exchange information, to get really like good information from them. Because sometimes you need to sit and like really talk about it and have it be casual. Like you need to set the right environment for it. You don't do it while you're in a noisy space, for example. That's like a trivial example, but setting aside the time to talk to someone, it's the same remote as it would be in person. You stay focused, you don't engage in distractions, and then that's it. That's worked from the client perspective too. So far, so good.
Yeah, that's always good to hear.
And also, the third one last thing is real estate. Like, I happen to live in New York City, and I have for the past 25 years of my life. This is a very expensive real estate market, even with like the crash of like maybe crash is overstated, but there's a lot more commercial office space than there used to be. Prices have gone down for some segments, not the high end, but some. I don't want that to be a part of what we are. I think that would damage the culture too much. But just as a practical concern, like I'm not in the business, like I can't afford to to launch an office here. It would have to be somewhere else. So that's a side effect. All these little things that the remote work boon couldn't have come at a better time than it did,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I think it's an incredible time to be a business owner if you are willing to adapt and willing to innovate and willing to utilize what is around you right now with the launching of AI, with the launching of software, with the launching of all these separate utilities within an organization, right? You talk though, and you mentioned it a couple times about culture. And one of the most challenging things that many organizations talk about, especially in professional services, because most professional services, the service is the expertise of the individual, right? And so, how are you developing culture within the organization? When you said it yourself, you don't necessarily see some members very often, if ever, or clients at all in person. How are you fostering a culture of whatever you're trying to achieve?
I mean, it's a good question because I can say, like, as we're still on the smaller side, but as we grow, that's definitely a concern is that we lose something. Because a lot of the culture is me and what lives in my head. And as we've started to really memorialize, like, this is how things work here. And it's not just like, SOPs and like, how do you check my email for me in the morning and things like that. It's the other types of things, like the way we talk to clients. I can give you a template, but if you just execute that template, it's not always going to work. But also, not everyone has like the same like tone exactly that you're looking for. At some point, you have to trust people and hope that you've set like a good example. We do a lot of check-in meetings throughout the week just to see how things are going, what's coming up, what's going on. But yeah, that is a big challenge. I don't know. My wife goes into an office 3 times a week.
Hmm.
I don't know that there's a big culture boon to that, the way that it's structured. She works for a larger media company. Doesn't sound like there's a lot of great culture forming there. It's like people kind of like going in. And, the famous thing is that like people always say that they go into the office to have Zoom meetings with people that aren't in the office.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
I
And
mean,
as someone who works 10 years, 10 plus years in a law firm environment, that was very collegial, but also like at times less collegial and a little toxic even. So I don't think there's any great fit. And you just kind of like lead by example, hire good people, be careful who you hire. That's a big part of it. Like, you can't train somebody to be a good fit. You can train somebody to get the skills, but to be a good fit, as we've learned, when you find like a good person and you've done like something towards that culture.
to me more about that side of things, that hiring side of things, because that is a challenge for every business owner, whether they're a small business, a medium business, or a large business, right? It's one of the most fundamental elements of growing any business is having team members that can then foster a good culture. So, how do you hire top level team members who fit your culture? What's the process behind it for you?
Well, we're still growing on the legal delivery side. We've used a lot of good contract attorneys that we've met. I was using one for a while. I grew up in Buffalo. He lives in Buffalo. Like, we had this kind of commonality. Like, that was a good fit, not because he was from Buffalo, just because there was a connection there that was more than just like, you can execute on this task. And I think there are a lot of like legal services companies that like, set you up with remote contractors that they paint it as like it's this very fungible, like, well, this person can fill like this need in this widget. And it's not like that. And it took us a while. We went without my paralegal. I really lucked out on finding her. She's actually in the Philippines. And that's something that, I think we make sure clients know. It's in all our engagement agreements, everything else. We're hyper cautious about data security. But I also know she's like the best person we could have found for that job. I trust her implicitly. She works incredibly hard. She's very intelligent. That's been working out great. I can't say that that was deliberate. I got a little lucky that she turned out to be such a good fit. And we just hired someone else, a new administrative assistant, Joyce. Very like that was after a not so great fit. So again, a little bit of a gamble. When I spoke to her, we're kind of hoping for the best a little bit. So I can't say that I've figured that out, to be really honest. Like,
I,
it's
yeah.
been trial and error, definitely. I think people too like are attracted to a certain type of enterprise structure, but that's something that's still very much in progress. We want to add more attorneys and we want to do it soon, but there's a lot of risk. Then once you do that and take that leap to get rid of somebody, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And not because it's, we're a very much employment at will type of situation in the United States, but it's not something you want to do. You don't want to invest in training somebody, realize they're not a great fit. So
Absolutely.
I'm not 100% sure what the answer is.
No.
To be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. In terms of then, when you do hire, how many candidates do you typically speak for a specific role? Are you going through a huge volume, or is it just a case of there's a CV look right and then it's just a conversation?
We'll have someone that looks, does the first cut for
Mm.
us and that interview, like, 4 or 5, just to cut it down a little bit. I know I'm also like a big softie when it comes to humans. I'll want to give everybody a job, and then I don't want to get rid of anybody because I feel bad or something. So I might try to limit it to, because
Smart move.
well, we've all been there before. Like, when you're like you need a job and you want a job, and then like you
I
go out there.
can.
So
I,
I remember that well.
I've been in the same position as well when hiring internally. I can be quite a softie as well in that sense, where it's like, oh, this person looks great. Oh, this person also looks great. Oh,
Everybody looks great.
let's hire everyone.
Right.
Exactly. It couldn't
So
agree more. Yeah.
maybe that's the next hire, is someone that like
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So obviously you are primarily working in the space of IP protection and that side of things. Talk to us more about that side of things, the typical client, and what are some of the most interesting things you've come across in the space of intellectual property?
So we handle patent and trademark issues primarily. A lot of copyright also, but patent and trademark. From that, there's, the applications obviously is a big part of things, getting people patents, getting people trademark registrations, a lot of disputes, cease and desist letters going in both directions, business arrangements gone wrong, things like that. So we touch on a lot of different things within that patent and trademark sphere. The clients that come from that, it's not like a unitary client pipeline almost, because sometimes the clients that need us on the trademark side might be a jewelry brand, a sunglasses brand, something like that. Those are like real recent examples. But then on the patent side, less so. There, it tends to be much more technology focused. My background is in computer science, but we do lots of different things. We'll help people with mechanical issues and obviously like software issues, kind of all over the place on that. So there's no one typical client. We work with lots of different types, from small, like I call them, like the wing and a prayer inventors of like an idea and like want to see it through, and like but take like a real, that's a real risk to like go and like start down that path. And then to much more funded companies with products in the marketplace that are, high volume and things like that. I mean, in terms of the most interesting stuff, it doesn't, I'm trying to think of what's something like recent that I can share that
Doesn't go past the
file that's been
yeah.
public. I mean, I can tell there's a lot of like, on the dispute side of things, that tends to be much more interesting than anything else. I mean, we're working with a Roblox developer on a business dispute kind of gone wrong right now. So that's interesting. The issues aren't particularly new, but they cross over both sides of IP, and they definitely, it's a new forum for me, not knowing that much about Roblox for age related reasons. So I was aware of Roblox, but there's been some good stuff. Like back in the day, we don't do this as much because we tend to not. Litigations, it's very lucrative for a law firm. It's exciting. It's fun. At my point in life, I don't want to be super involved in the day to day litigation. Surprises aren't the best thing for the way that I want to live my life right now. Nor is like a lot of business travel. And I did a lot of that in my 20s and 30s. And those were the fun stories where, you're going and you're trying to find like this, someone sued your client and you're trying to find something earlier. So their patent's invalid if you can find this earlier. So there's like an Indiana Jones kind of thing where you're putting the pieces together.
Wow.
So we had some fun with that, some Silicon Valley adventures looking for like early video conferencing devices from the 80s and things like that. But it can also be mundane too. Like we did a lot of diapers at my old firm. Like diaper technology is constantly evolving.
Wow.
And I went to a lot of diaper factories. It kind of goes both directions. Sometimes it can be super, super exciting, and sometimes it can be super mundane. But the stuff that we get for clients, it doesn't have to be super exciting. It can just be like, this is an advancement over what came before, and we're trying to do X. So not always super, super spectacular. But, we work with everyone all the same. We don't, everyone gets the same level of attention.
Sure. And what do you think is the biggest misconception you see entrepreneurs, business owners, innovators have when it comes to patent, trademark, IP protection?
I think they both over and underestimate the expense depending on who they are. I think they over and undervalue the importance of patent and trademark protection depending on who they are. Some have a very bullish view that this is going to solve all the ills of what they're doing and don't fully understand the nuances of what a patent gets you and what it covers. And that can be difficult because it's not, there's the legal side of patent law is very, very specialized and very intricate. But like the bullet points, I can give you a 2-page handout that explains most things that an entrepreneur needs to know about it. And I think I actually have that on our website. It's something we give out all the time because there's some basic things that like, what's this actually going to cover? What's this going to get me? But yeah, like not having a real sense for what is this? Why do I want it? What's it going to get me? And what's this actually going to cost? Comes up in different forms all the time, if I had to boil it down.
Makes a lot of sense, and I can imagine, especially coming in and not understanding the value of what a patent or trademark does, and putting a lot of weight on it as well. See, I've watched things like Shark Tank, or in the UK we call it Dragon's Den. We've got our own version, and you've got people coming in and they spend 5 years designing a technology, got it patented and everything, never made a sale, and then they're like, oh well, you've put all your eggs in one basket here, and it's not working out. And then you've got on the other flip side where someone's got created something, it's getting great sales, but they haven't patented their idea. And then the Dragons is like, well, you haven't done that. What's to stop someone else from just taking exactly what you've done at one of the larger organizations and running with it and making millions and millions? And then, so it's really interesting to hear. It's like finding that sweet
Right.
spot of understanding.
Well, here's the thing. Like, if you disclose an idea publicly, at some point it's going to be no longer patentable because it's now out in public and you will have exceeded like the grace period for filing a patent application. That's usually like in the United States, that's a year from your first public disclosure, sale, whatever it is. You have a year to file a patent application. Then it's done. So if you go past that window, you're cooked. There's nothing you can do about that. There's no getting that back. What we tell people all the time is like startup companies, except maybe the one where the guy's spending 5 years financing it himself and like getting his own patent, like they're going to, at some point, you're going to be asking somebody for money to help grow your company, whether it's like angel investing, series A, B, whatever. You're going to be looking for that. If you can't get that, the patent will potentially enhance the sale, enhance the investment. So if you can at least get something useful filed, then you're off to a better start than spending 10,000 on an application that you're going to have to alter because the thing's not fully done yet and 6 months go by. We tell it to get a provisional on file, get something on file. Then at least if you're shopping around for investment, you can answer the question, you've checked the box, you've met that filing date, you're not worried about that 1 year, and then at least you've got something tangible.
Yeah.
That's kind of the minimum that we tell people in that set of circumstances. But it's not going to, yeah, you might be able to get a patent on this. But the reality is, unless you're paying for it to be expedited, which isn't terribly expensive, it's a couple thousand extra, you're still looking at 2 years or more to get the patent. And even then, you're going to have to enforce it. And enforcement takes resources. You can send a cease and desist letter, but if it's not backed by something, willingness to go forward to litigation, it's not going to help you too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those are all decisions. Like you can't go back in time and say, "Oh wait, I should have applied for that." You have to apply, or you're going to lose it.
It makes a lot of sense. Okay, so in this segment of the podcast, we call the Entrepreneur's Room, and it's a series of questions we like to ask all of our guests to give our viewers and listeners an opportunity to understand how business owners think and operate in their business. So the first question I'd like to ask at this stage of the podcast is, how are you currently spending your days as a leader of the business?
So I am by nature an early-ish riser and definitely an early to work person wherever I can. My kid goes to school. My 12-year-old goes to school right around the corner from here. So I drop him off at school for 8 o'clock for his 8 o'clock arrival. And then I'm usually in here by 8:05. And that's on the later side for me. If I could do it my own way, I'd be here by 7 every day. Because by later in the day, that's just my cycle. And it has been since I first started right out of law school. I was always the early one in the office. But if I've done the ideal day, what I'm looking for is that I would have spent last night setting up what I had to do today, the most important tasks. But 9 times out of 10, I haven't. So I will spend my first figuring out what are the classic most important tasks, eat the frog, whatever book you read, get that stuff there, and try to set the day up to do half in the business and then half on the business. So I have to generate revenue from legal services for at least a part of the day. Otherwise, that's what we're selling ultimately. And then at some point in the day, there's other things I have to do, like articles, social media, marketing, chasing down Google reviews, all that kind of stuff. So that's the ideal. Then usually 4 or 5, then I'll check in again at night. But that's the common, and interspersed with that is usually a meeting with somebody staff-wise, half an hour during the day just to kind of go through things. But yeah, it follows kind of a predictable pattern. That's why I said only litigation surprises I don't love.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I love your response there, especially when you're saying you try and spend half the time in the business, half the time on the business. And that is, I think, one of the most challenging aspects of growing any business is trying to make sure you're sticking to your quota of being able to work on the business, because that's the thing that will help the business grow, right? But I often find, especially with this podcast, I speak to a lot of leaders and they say they spend more time in the business than they'd like. So it's always,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It bleeds over all the time because like, you have clients want things, you're behind on something. It happens all the time. Do I hit that 50-50 split most days? No. I mean, it always like bleeds over, but that's why you get help for a lot of, for a
yeah.
lot of the administrative side at least. I've gotten more help. So there's a lot of things that are happening. We're being much more aggressive in marketing and social media and putting out content that we've been in a while. I wasn't able to do that until Joyce came along, and now she's kind of managing that and keeping me on task. And then it frees me up to do, the writing side of things instead of worrying about the scheduling, this and this. Small stuff, but it makes a big difference.
No, couldn't agree with you.
Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time is required reading for
Yeah,
anybody running their
great,
business. It's a great, great book.
great book, great recommendation. I don't think I've got it on my shelf behind me, but it might be somewhere in the other room. Yeah, no. In terms of then growing the business, obviously, when you're growing the business, you have to be consistently looking at specific metrics to ensure that you're hitting KPIs, hitting targets. What metrics matter most to you when running the business?
So every Monday, I've got like a thing in my calendar that I go in, and the first thing I do is what was total legal sales last week? What did we bill out? What did we put on invoice? What do we do that's not billed? Cash that came in, obviously. How much of that is for expenses and things like that? And then leads and converted leads. We're starting to parse out the lead stuff a little bit more. That's basically, I mean, it's that simple. Like, what are our sales relative to our target for the week? And what do we have in new cases that came in and the value of the new cases? Like super basic stuff. But I fell victim to like, I was using Airtable and I had this crazy setup, and it doesn't matter. There's some basic stuff. You got to get started by just doing it every week. Like just do it and keep track of it. Because if you don't actually keep track of it, whatever the system is doesn't matter. So another one of those lessons learned along the way is that sometimes seeing your KPIs is better.
Yeah, no, 100%. By tracking things, you're able to actually make optimizations based off of what's happening in the business in real time. And if you're not tracking it, you're literally just like trying to get a temperature check through putting your finger in the air. And so, yeah, 100%. In terms of growing the business itself, you mentioned there once you hired Joyce, now you have more time to be focusing on writing and marketing and that type of stuff. How are you currently growing the business? What marketing activities are you currently doing to grow the business?
So before we dive in to paid marketing, where you can obviously spend a lot of money very quickly, I mean, one of the most important things is to be able to track what's happening. And we didn't have that for a while. It was just kind of like licking my finger and putting it. Organic and referral marketing has been our bread and butter for like a long time. Like we're specialized. So people send things to us. Oh, David's the patent guy. David's the trademark guy. And things come our way, especially from other attorneys, because they're not worried that we're going to try to poach their clients. We're not interested in the other sides of whatever's going on there. It's just, we're very focused on our practice area. So reaching out to other attorneys, sometimes even like out of the blue, we're always like looking for other people that fit a certain model, people that do some sort of general business law that might encounter trademark clients, preferably with some sort of tech component, and sometimes just reach out and say hi. That kind of one-to-one referral marketing, nurturing the old relationships has been very, very good for us. We've also done a lot more of optimizing the website, SEO, just putting like decent content. I've got another thing going up today. It's not always like the sexiest thing, but it's like useful content that people find and find helpful. Today we're doing something that's, it's on different fee structures in the patent list. Like there's different fee models depending on are you a big company or a little company and how much you can save on all of that and what meets it. Like that's really useful. And, that's not going to be something, that someone's like, ooh, that's very, very exciting. But if you go to the website and you're looking for information on that, like that's helpful, like solid information. Putting like content like that up on the website has been very helpful. Getting the website optimized. And then like Google reviews, we've been doing this for 10 years. We just had our 50th Google review, which is like gangbusters by any means. But considering we've only put like effort into it for a little bit, I'm happy about that. And like the calls, it's amazing. Like it's incredible. Like the calls just like start coming in off of random Google leads. Not always. Some of them are great. Some of them are a little out there. But we're getting like clients coming in just like very organically through just kind of working the channels that are out there. The stuff that people tell you to do actually works
Yeah.
without dumping a bunch of money into it. Paid ads will be next, but we want to make sure we get our house in order on this side first.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I love what you just said there in the sense that the things that people tell us to be doing actually works, right? And we're told constantly post on LinkedIn, post on social media, post on your website, do SEO optimization, do this, do that, get your reviews in, get case studies, get client testimonials, get quotes, get this and that. And it's often like, oh yeah, but how much will that affect our business? What's the ROI on that? Like, I got work to do, right?
Try it out for 2 months. Try it out for 2 months and see. Like that's what we're doing right now. And now we're in a position where we can actually track it.
Yeah, there you go.
And being yourself too, being authentic helps a lot.
Absolutely.
Too. Like we do free consults with people because I think, not to be smug, but I think one of the things that we sell is like that I'm a normal, relatively normal human being who can talk to you about complex legal issues and make it, I think, understandable without like being like dumbing it down too much. I think that's one of the things that we do really well. So the accessibility, and I don't know, we do well with that. It's an investment of time to do a lot of consults like that, but I think it really helps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It
And
builds
that's one of the things we're going to struggle with, like as we grow. Like, how do you translate that into something else? Because again, like I know the idea that someone can't do what you do. We all know that that's not true. Like we're all like replaceable to some extent. So it's a matter of trusting that and training the right people. But yeah, but that part too, just being yourself and authentic, and the stuff that you put out, whatever it is, social media, anything else, like being yourself, and thinking too of like really what the client's interests are. What's their problem? Like, what are you selling? To sell to that problem helps a lot. So, as a very smart coach of mine once said, we're selling the hole, not the drill. Like you can tell them all about patent law, but they don't care until they've got a hole in the wall. Then they need your patching or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You need to be focusing on serving the customers, the prospects that actually have the problem, and nurturing the prospects that may have the problem someday, right? It's about hitting both those sides.
And it's not hard if you start growing your mailing list. It's not hard to keep those people in your universe.
Yeah,
that's where like the little bit of social media here and there, just think of all the things that come through your inbox, your Instagram feed, whatever else, that you don't read the content, but just a consistent reminder. Hey, this person is here, and this person is X.
Absolutely.
They're the person that does this. And they show up every few weeks.
Absolutely. I like to end every single podcast with the same question with every guest, and the question is, if you had a magic wand you could wave to solve one business problem, what would that be?
Solve one business problem. External or internal?
Completely up to you.
I'm thinking about how much to reveal about myself. I think there's certain aspects of the way we interact with our work sometimes that impact what we do. I think staying focused and on task for me without getting distracted to something that seems to be more urgent would pay a lot of dividends if I could stay like laser focused like that. Otherwise, getting exposure to more people and getting them kind of into our system and having them really understand sometimes what the value is. A lot of people come to us like not sure of what they're looking for exactly, but having that clients understand that a little bit more. And that's, again, that comes from us too, is helping like educate them early on as to what the expectations are. And that's one of the things we've been working on, is more of that. After you file an application, wait for a while. Marks, patents, even longer, educating people in that chunk, like just giving them more, hey, we haven't forgotten about you. That's one of the things we're working on. Yeah, helping to manage their expectations of what the process can be.
That makes sense, because I can imagine if it takes a long process, if it's a long period of time, it's like there's an element of buyer's remorse element that comes in. They've paid you, they've done something, and it's like, okay, what happens now kind of situation. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
No, but I'm not, I'm confident enough in myself to say that like there are things that I could do better, definitely. And sometimes like, the staying wedded to my task be better.
Amazing. Amazing.
There's a
Well,
lot of moving parts in an organization, and you want to like solve everything all at once. And
I've been there. Honestly, I've been there. All I do is like one task to next task to next. The amount of tabs I've got open, if you saw how many tabs I have open of switching between tasks, you'd be like, oh my God, this is going to hurt your head. So my mind is exactly the same way. Well, David, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. And thank you so much for sharing your insights and having a
my
really
pleasure.
great conversation. For our viewers and listeners out there who might want to reach out to you, where would they go? Where would they find you?
You can go to boagip.com, which you can put in the notes or whatever. There's always ways to contact us there. That's certainly the easiest way to find us. Old
Fantastic.
school, lots of some patent information, some trademark information on there, but definitely links to get in touch.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put that in the description. And David, again, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your time today.
My pleasure.